As soon as I received the SMS, I should have realized something wasn't right. Sweetheart, we need to talk about the trip. We've decided to postpone it until next year. My stomach turned to knots as I reread the message and squinted at the computer. Deferred? This was our first family vacation in years, and we had been organizing it for months. To make it happen, I had reorganized my work schedule, reduced my expenses, and saved every last cent. There were just 2 weeks left, according to the timer on my phone. It was off now all of a sudden. I immediately called my mother. I could hear the fatigue in her voice as soon as she picked up. As though anticipating my call, she groaned. Alyssa, I know you're disappointed, but things are just tight right now. We are unable to pay for it. I took a deep breath. I knew what it was like to struggle financially. To pay for my share, I had been working extra hours at the cafe. I even volunteered to cover the cost of my own airfare. It felt like a slap in the face, though, the way she said it, as if the choice had already been made and my sentiments were unimportant. Maybe we can find a cheaper hotel if it's about money, I said, my voice steady but hopeful. Cut the journey down a bit? She paused, only a moment, and I learned everything from that second. It's just not the right time, Alyssa, she whispered softly. Next year, we'll make it happen. I swear, a pledge. I should have been wise enough not to believe it. My stomach fell 2 days later while I was browsing Facebook during my lunch break. A photo of my parents grinning on a beach was there. They had beverages in their hands, the sun shone on their skin, and the ocean stretched out in front of them like a goddamn vacation commercial. My heart was racing. I had trembling hands. I scrolled down to see more pictures. Jake, my brother, and his girlfriend laughing on a boat. My parents smiling over lobster dishes at a seafood restaurant. Then came the caption that chilled me to the bone. Family time is priceless. Family time. However, I wasn't present because they said the vacation had been rescheduled. My head racing, I shut my phone and gazed blankly at the cafe counter. Perhaps there was a reason. It might have been a last-minute work issue. Perhaps the vacation was a gift from someone. But I knew the truth in my heart. Nothing had been delayed by them. They simply concluded that I wasn't involved. I didn't give my mother a call that evening. On their posts, I left no comments. I remained silent as additional photos of snorkeling, beach bonfires, and elegant dinners came in. Memories created without me. And something changed inside of me with each image. It was more than just the journey. About all the times I had been an afterthought, this was it. They forgot every birthday. Every Christmas, I got whatever was convenient while Jake got exactly what he wanted. All of the sacrifices I made for them were never reciprocated. I tightened my jaw and inhaled deeply. They believed that I would be too hurt to speak up. They assumed I would overlook it. However, this time, they were mistaken. Because a week later, when they returned home, I was anticipating their arrival. I also had a strategy. The cab pulled into the driveway, and I heard it. Looking tanned, content, and rejuvenated, I watched Mom, Dad, and Jake emerge through the kitchen window, dragging their bags behind them, sun-kissed after their trip was postponed. I tightened my jaw to control my breathing. They were unaware that I had viewed the photos. Not quite yet. My mother was the first to notice me as the front door opened. Her voice was excessively loud and upbeat, as if she hadn't recently returned from a week-long lie. "Alyssa!" she exclaimed. "Oh, sweetheart, I missed you. How have you been?" I crossed my arms. "Busy," was my blunt response. With a grunt, my dad put his luggage down and entered behind her. "That's good. How's work?" I gave a little sour laugh. Work? They only believed I did that? Work and pretend I didn't exist to them by scrolling through their photos. Jake stretched and yawned as if he had just been through a particularly taxing experience. "Man, I'm beat. Traveling takes it out of you," he laughed. "Hope you held down the fort while we were gone." I quickly looked at him. While we were gone, as if that were commonplace, as if nothing was amiss, as if I hadn't been repeatedly rehashing their treachery for the past week. I inhaled deeply. "No more acting like you're someone you're not." My voice was unnaturally calm as I turned to face my mother. "So, how was the trip?" She hesitated and blinked. "Oh, well, she dismissed it with a sweep of her hand. "We just needed a little getaway. Nothing too special, untruthful." After taking my phone out of my pocket, I rotated the screen in their direction and unlocked it. The picture album, the selfie on the beach, the trip on the boat, the elegant meal, and the caption that gave me a gut ache once more. Family time is priceless. I cocked my head. Looks special to me. Quiet, dense, heavy. I feel guilty. Then my mother laughed nervously. Alyssa, I spoke coldly and sharply. Just don't. My father cleared his throat. Look, sweetheart, it wasn't. My voice soared. Something raw piercing through. Stop. Just tell me the truth. You never postponed the trip. You just didn't want me there. Mom's mouth opened, but nothing came out. For a brief moment, I saw the shame pass across her face before she made a feeble excuse to hide it. It wasn't like that, honey. We just thought, I yelled. What? That I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't see the pictures? That I'd be too stupid to catch the lie? Jake rolled his eyes and moaned. Oh my God, Alyssa. Are you seriously making this a big deal? It was just a trip. Just a trip. I felt like I was slapped by the words. I organized the excursion. I saved up for this vacation. The journey that I was meant to take. I gave a head shake. You could have told me the truth, but instead, you lied. You made me feel like I wasn't worth bringing. Jake laughed. You're being dramatic. I chuckled. Bitter. Horrible. No, Jake. I'm finally being honest. My mother came forward and grasped my hand. Alyssa, please. I withdrew. No. Not this time. This was something they needed to hear. This isn't just about the trip. It's about every single time I've been treated like I don't matter. Every birthday where Jake got exactly what he wanted, and I got whatever was convenient. Every time I put you guys first, and you didn't even notice. I swallowed hard, and suddenly my voice was trembling. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I gave enough, I'd finally be enough for you. But I never was I? Quiet. Tears filled my mother's eyes. Alyssa, it's not like we love Jake more than you. I smiled a little sourly. Maybe you don't, but it sure feels that way. One more quiet. And that? That was my response. I gave a deep exhale and nodded. Got it. Then, without saying anything more, I picked up my bag and headed for the door. My dad yelled after me and asked, Alyssa, where are you going? I didn't turn around. Somewhere I'm actually wanted. After that, I departed. In my life, for the first time, I prioritized myself. My phone was buzzing nonstop for days. It was the standard damage control at first. Mom, we should discuss this, Alyssa. You're exaggerating this situation beyond what is necessary. Dad, nothing will change if you ignore us. Give your mom a call. Jake, Alyssa, Jesus. Move on. You are behaving like a kid. I gave an eye roll. Traditional. They didn't apologize. All they wanted was for me to stop bothering them. I choose to disregard them. And when didn't I answer? The tone changed. Mom, please, sweetheart. You are missed. We had no intention of hurting you. Dad, we ought to have done it differently. Let's have a conversation. Then one that nearly killed me. Mom, I feel terrible, Alyssa. Knowing that you're angry with us keeps me awake at night. I came close to answering for a second. Nearly. But then I thought, would they have ever been honest with me if I had never seen the pictures? Would they ever have been guilty? It was a painfully obvious answer. I then closed my phone and waited for the silence to end. It wasn't simple. I had been the first to reach out my entire life, the one to make things more amicable, the person who fixes it. Therefore, it initially seemed strange to sit in silence and maintain my boundaries. However, then I would recall the text stating that the vacation had been rescheduled, the pictures of them having a good time on Facebook without me. Without hesitation, they told the untruth. The silence felt liberating all of a sudden. Their transmissions delayed after the 5th day. They ceased entirely by the 8th day. And that was evidence. There wouldn't have been any attempt at all if it weren't for me. I ought to have known. It was to be anticipated. It still ached, though, in some way. I did something I had never done before a week after they returned. I made travel arrangements. Not with them. For me, just a peaceful mountain cabin. Nothing ostentatious. Only a long way away. I gathered my keys, packed a backpack, and headed out, without letting anyone know. I wasn't requesting permission for once. I wasn't holding out for inclusion. I was merely surviving. and it was wonderful. My phone was flooded with missed calls and texts by the time I returned. However, I took my time answering. I wasn't yet prepared. Since I've never in my life, at last, I was prioritizing myself, and I wanted to savor the sensation a bit more. They were not accustomed to my disregard for them. Thus, when I remained silent for longer than they anticipated, they arrived at my house. I was also prepared. I anticipated it. The instant I disregarded their texts, calls, and guilt trips, I was aware that my parents would not overlook it. Thus, that Saturday afternoon when I heard someone knock on my door, I wasn't shocked. I put down my coffee and took a big breath. I didn't have trembling hands. I didn't have a racing heart. I was prepared. I pulled the door open. They were there. My parents. They had a different appearance. Not upset, not arrogant, not demanding. They appeared anxious. My mother whispered, "Alyssa," as she tucked her handbag under her arm. "Can we come in?" I rested my weight on the doorframe. "Depends," I replied rationally. "Are you here to actually listen? Or just to tell me why I'm wrong for being upset?" My father let out a sigh. "We're here to talk, really talk." I looked at their faces. I wasn't being told to let them in. Unlike in their texts, they weren't brushing off my emotions. They wanted to know. That was novel. I moved out of the way. "Fine," I replied. "Come in." With a lot of unspoken things in the air, I led them into the living room. With her hands clasped in her lap, my mother sat on the couch. My father remained upright, fidgeting uncomfortably, as if unsure of his place in this situation. I crossed my arms and sat opposite them, awaiting. My mother was the first to speak. She said, "I don't know where to start." I cocked my head. "The truth is, a good place." She winced. My father let out a breath through his nostrils. "We messed up." I blinked. I didn't think he would say that. Mom's eyes lowered to her hands. "Alyssa, when we said the trip was postponed, it was a lie. No justifications. Don't skirt the issue. Just the facts." With a constricted throat, I swallowed. "Why?" She paused. Then, at last, "We thought it would be easier, simpler." Similar to how she texted me. I tightened my jaw. "Easier for who?" "Quiet." "For you?" I pushed back. "For Jake?" I laughed resentfully. "Because it sure as hell wasn't easier for me." My father touched his face. "We didn't think it would hurt you this much." I sneered. "You didn't think at all." Mom's voice broke. "We thought you'd understand. That term. That word, damn it. In their messages, they used the same one. The meaningless word." I bent over. "Tell me the truth." I spoke steadily while maintaining eye contact. "If I hadn't seen those pictures, would you have ever told me?" They didn't say anything. And that was my response. I pushed my voice to remain calm and swallowed the lump in my throat. "Do you have any idea what that felt like?" I responded. "To see you all having fun without me? To know that I was never even considered?" My mother's eyes glowed with shame. "Alyssa, we love you." I gave a headshake. "You don't treat people you love like that." Dad rubbed the back of his neck and moaned. "We failed you, sweetheart. We should have been honest." I gazed at them. Then I said, "Why are you really here? To apologize? Or to make yourselves feel better?" They paused. Then, in a whisper, Mom said, "Both." That was at least truthful. For a long period, we sat in silence. At last, Mom said something else. "I don't know how to fix this." With the weight of all the years I had been in second place, I let out a slow exhale. And I came to a realization they didn't have to fix things for me. All I needed was for them to comprehend nothing would be the same. "I don't know either," I said. "But I do know this." I looked them in the eye and spoke quietly. "I'm not going to be the one to fix it for you." My father gave a slow, sympathetic nod. The mother wiped her eyes. "What do we do now?" I gave a shrug. "That's up to you." They believed that an apology would suffice. However, years of being treated as an afterthought are not erased by an apology. They had to demonstrate their willingness to adapt this time. It was simple to apologize. Modification, the difficult part was that. I wasn't relieved when they went. Nothing seemed to have been fixed in my opinion. They had acknowledged their error. They had expressed regret. However, I had previously heard apologies. Their behavior had consistently conveyed a different message. And now? Words didn't interest me. I was looking for evidence. In my life, For the first time, I didn't make a conscious effort to initiate contact. I didn't wish them a good morning by SMS. I didn't provide life updates. I didn't ask them whether they needed anything at all. For the first time, I forced them to work. And initially, nothing took place. Days went by. Next, a week. Next, 2. There it is, I thought. That was the evidence I required. If it weren't for me making the effort, there was absolutely no attempt. I ought to have known it was to be anticipated. However, the pain persisted. Things didn't start to change until the 3rd week. My mother called on a Tuesday at random. I let the voicemail go. Then a text message arrived. Mom, hello, my love. I'm just considering you. I hope all is well with you. All right. I wanted to ignore it, part of me, to maintain a safe distance. However, another aspect of me, the section that had been awaiting any indication that they were genuinely concerned, hesitated. I took a while to respond. I chose to wait instead. My father also texted the following day. Dad, I miss you, child. Let's go out to eat sometime. I gazed at the text. My emotions are clashing within me. I wasn't prepared to let them back in. However, because, for the first time, indeed, they were making an effort, I accepted dinner. Not because everyone was forgiven for everything. Not because I was prepared to act as though nothing had occurred. However, because I had to check to make sure they were serious. A quiet diner is where we first met. Only the 3 of us. Jake wasn't present. I could tell they had been listening just by that. We took a seat. Additionally, for the first time in a long, I was asked about me by my parents. Not in reference to Jake. Not about the job. Not about if there was anything I could do to help them. Only me. I doubted that it was sincere. Or perhaps they were merely attempting to repair the damaged item. However, for the first time, in fact, they were paying attention. And that was novel. I heard my mother clear her throat halfway through dinner. She stated cautiously, We've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how we've treated you. I drank a glass of water, remaining quiet. She went on, and we've realized that we've always assumed you didn't need us the way Jake did. That because you were strong and independent. We didn't have to put in as much effort. I looked her in the eye. And now? She took a swallow. And now we know that was wrong. I looked at my father. He gave a nod. We see it now, Alyssa. We do. Just for a second, I was at a loss for words. Because I had been waiting my entire life for those words. And yet, I still didn't trust them in part. Not quite yet. Something had changed by the end of dinner. Not in an exaggerated manner, everything is fixed. However, in a, perhaps they truly mean it this time. There was still much for them to do. However, for once, the first steps were taken by them. And for the time being, that was sufficient. I was surprised by how well dinner had gone. I wasn't naive, though. Years of being treated like an afterthought couldn't be reversed by a single lunch or discussion. I wasn't searching for an easy solution. I didn't want to hear another hollow apology. If my parents were sincere about wanting to change, they needed to demonstrate it. A week later came the first real test. My birthday. If I had learned anything from history, it was that our family had never celebrated birthdays fairly. Jake's birthdays? A huge deal. Dinner at any upscale restaurant he desired, parties, and presents. Mine? A card, a phone call perhaps, if they were able to recall. I decided not to have any expectations for this year. I assured myself that it wouldn't matter. And yet, that morning when I woke up, a little piece of me was still there. The part of them that still hoped they might change. I hoped so. And now, they remembered. My door was knocked on at precisely 10 in the morning. I put down my coffee and scowled. I didn't think anyone would show up. I spotted them when I opened the door, parents. A cake in hand, I gasped. This was something they had never done before. My mother murmured, "Happy birthday, sweetheart," and gave me a hesitant grin. I gave them a blink. You remembered. My father chuckled a little. Of course we did. Additionally, for once, I took them at face value. They didn't simply take the cake and go. In fact, they stayed with me all day. We didn't take any extravagant actions. It was just a calm afternoon in my house speaking. Getting caught up, delicious cake that was flawless but a tad overly sweet. Since I owned it. For once, after a long time, they seemed to want to be there. And I was unaware of how much I had required that Until it did. They demonstrated it once more a few weeks later. At work, one had a major presentation, anything about which I had been anxious for weeks. One night at supper, I had brought it up in passing. I don't give it much thought. However, when the time came, I received a text message. Mom, you are on my mind today. You'll do fantastically. Then another. Dad, tell us about it, child. I'm proud of you despite everything. I spent a long time staring at my phone. This was something they had never done before. I wasn't accustomed to their recalling minor details. And yet, they were right here, making an effort. It wasn't flawless. Even now and again, old behaviors would resurface. Even yet, Mom would sometimes fall back on defending Jake. Dad still found it difficult to put himself into more than a few sentences. What's the difference, though? They managed to catch themselves. When they made a mistake, they were aware. They also made an effort to improve. Additionally, that was important. A few months later, my mother contacted me one evening. Not specifically for anything, only to converse. She also let out a sigh at one point during the talk. Carefully, she continued, I know it's going to take time for you to trust us again. I took a swallow, a pause. Then, we're not giving up, Alyssa. You're too important to us. My throat constricted. For the first time, I trusted her. Change took time to occur. Still, there were times when I realized, awaiting the happening of the other shoe, waiting for my parents to revert to their previous behaviors, awaiting their forgetfulness to give up attempting. However, weeks went by, months after, and they continued to appear. It wasn't flawless. It wasn't easy. However, for the very first time in my childhood, I felt important. My phone buzzed one evening when I was enjoying a cup of tea on my back porch. Mom was there. It's not an apology, not a trip of guilt, just a text message. Mom, I'm thinking of you. How are you finding the week? I gazed at the display. There's a warming sensation in my chest. Due to the fact that the message, a year ago, it wouldn't have existed. I received another surprise a few weeks later. I was putting money down for a vacation. A trip taken alone, only for me. I hadn't discussed it much with my family, primarily because to my desire to avoid dealing with their viewpoints. However, at dinner one evening, my father inquired, So, when's your trip? I blinked. You remember? He grinned. Of course. It's Italy, right? Mom gave a nod. We were actually talking about it the other day. Do you need help with anything? Packing? Planning? The first took a close look at them, awaiting a catch. However, there wasn't. They weren't giving because they expected payment. They were making the offer because they desired to be involved in my life. And that was novel. I received a text the night before my departure from Jake. I nearly forgot to open it. However, curiosity prevailed. Jake, your mother is worried about you flying alone, but she won't admit it. You are aware of her personality. I gave an eye roll. Normal. Then, one more message. Jake, you're actually doing it? Going about your life as you see fit. I paused before answering. Me, I agree. Yes, I am. A long pause ensued. Then, Jake, that's pretty awesome, sis. The burden of the past year weighed heavily on me as I landed in Rome. So much of my life had been spent, awaiting my folks' visit. I'm waiting to be included. I'm looking forward to the day when I won't feel like a forgotten thing. However, I was done waiting. I was making my own decision. I had created a life free from the need to win their approval. And in some way, in carrying out that, at last, they had figured out how to be there for me. My phone buzzed as I was at a cafe a few days into my trip. A message for the group. Mom, we just looked at your most recent pictures. Rome looks fantastic. Give us a call shortly. You are missed. I grinned. Not because I was in need of their blessing, however, because, for the first time, they weren't only uttering words. They had them in mind. Additionally, I've never in my life that was sufficient. You shouldn't need to plead for affection. To be included, you shouldn't have to battle. And if those around you don't think you're valuable, make your own decision. Because occasionally, when you're done waiting for attention, at last, they take attention.